My name is Floriana Foster. I'm 71 years old. And the moment my son raised his voice at me in that kitchen, telling me not to argue with his wife in her house, something inside me stopped. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone, the certainty in his voice, the way he didn't even glance at me after he said it. That was the moment I knew I didn't have a home anymore. It didn't happen all at once. You don't wake up one day and realize you're a stranger in the life you built. It starts with small things, and if you're like me, you keep brushing them off because that's what mothers do. You make space, you stay quiet. You tell yourself it's not a big deal. But one day, the silence swallows you whole. I raised Victor alone. His father, my husband, died when Victor was just 8. It was a car accident. I remember the police officer knocking on my door. It was around 8:15 p.m., and I had just finished washing dishes. The man couldn't even look me in the eye. From that day on, it was just me and my boy. I worked double shifts at the hospital. I packed his lunches with handwritten notes. I skipped vacations. I never remarried. Every breath I took was for him. When he met Lindsay, I was so happy. She was bright, confident, and Victor looked at her the way his father once looked at me. After they got engaged, Victor brought up the idea of buying a bigger home. He said it would be nice to have me live with them. Said I could help with the baby when the time came. I didn't hesitate. I sold the little house his father and I bought after we married. I handed over the check and said, let's build something together. The house was beautiful. 2 stories, a wraparound porch, and a kitchen that got the morning sun. But from the beginning, I felt like a visitor. Lindsay had opinions about everything which I expected, but it was how quickly I was brushed aside that stung. I suggested curtains for the living room. She said she'd already ordered some. I bought a welcome mat. She replaced it. The first time she referred to me as just someone staying with them, when her friend asked, I laughed. But it stuck with me. One morning, I made pancakes for everyone. Victor loved them growing up. Lindsay said she was trying to keep gluten out of the house and that I didn't need to cook. I stopped after that. The dining table had 6 chairs. Somehow, one always felt like it didn't belong. My seat kept changing. Sometimes I wouldn't be told dinner was ready. Sometimes I'd walk in and they'd already started eating. Still, I stayed quiet. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself they were just adjusting. When their baby came, I cried like it was my own. I rocked her every night, even when Lindsay said she preferred quiet. I held back tears more times than I could count. It's not easy feeling invisible in a place your own hands helped create. That night in the kitchen, I had offered to help with dishes. Lindsay said she had it. I picked up a dish anyway. Victor turned to me. His voice was sharp. He said I shouldn't argue with his wife in her house. Her house, the words echoed. I don't remember what I did next. I just remember the silence that followed, how it filled the room like smoke. I stood there holding that dish and knew I'd never be the same again. The guest room was never meant to be mine. That's what Lindsay started calling it after we moved in. The guest room. I remember how that label sank in the first time she said it. I had just finished folding baby blankets and stacking them near the bed. She walked in with a box of books and said she'd store them in the guest room closet since it wasn't being used. My things were still in that closet. My sweaters, my photo albums, my wedding dress. At first I smiled, told myself not to make a fuss. I'd done that a lot in my life. Smiled through hard days, swallowed words that might make someone uncomfortable. But the quiet started piling up inside me heavier with each day. I tried to speak up in little ways. Suggested new curtains for the living room. Lindsay said she had already ordered some. Brought home a welcome mat that said Home Sweet Home. The next day it was gone. Replaced with a sleek black one that said nothing at all. Victor never said much either. He was busy, always working, always looking tired. I cooked breakfast twice that first week, pancakes like he used to love when he was a boy. Lindsay told me gently she was trying to keep gluten out of the house. Said they'd just do smoothies. The next morning I didn't go near the stove. I told myself it was a phase, a new rhythm. We just needed time to adjust. But day by day, I found myself pulling back from the kitchen, from the conversations, from the feeling that I was wanted. The backyard, though, gave me comfort. I'd asked for a small patch behind the garage where I could grow peonies like the ones I had at the old house. I brought seeds I'd kept for years. Some had been passed down from my mother. That space mattered to me. It was where I went to breathe, to feel useful again. One afternoon, I came home and saw a work crew out back. They were laying down artificial grass, pulling up soil, leveling what had once been my garden corner. I asked Lindsay if there had been a change of plans. She said they wanted something low maintenance, said it looked cleaner this way. I didn't say much. Went to the laundry room where nobody ever followed me, sat on the stool near the dryer and stared at the wall. My hands stayed folded in my lap for nearly an hour. I remember that detail, the way my palms rested on each other, still like I was holding something invisible I couldn't set down. Then came the Sunday that changed everything. It was dinner. A small roast steamed broccoli, mashed potatoes. My granddaughter was fidgety. I noticed she wasn't eating much. I suggested quietly that we add a little butter and salt to her vegetables, just enough to make them easier for her. It wasn't meant to offend, just a thought, a grandmother's instinct. Victor's voice came fast, flat, and louder than it needed to be. He told me not to argue with his wife in her house. Her house. I couldn't even blink. Those two words rolled through my mind like thunder without rain. I looked across the table at Victor. His eyes were back on his plate. Lindsay kept slicing her food like nothing happened. My granddaughter hummed a tune under her breath, and I sat there still, not frozen, just no longer part of what was unfolding around me. I looked at the walls. I remembered picking the light fixtures, writing the check, walking through the half-built frame in my boots. I remembered holding the house key in my hand before we moved in. They had hugged me, thanked me, called it our home. I didn't feel anger. I didn't want revenge. I just felt something go quiet inside, like a light had flickered off and no one had noticed. I pushed my chair back. The sound it made felt louder than Victor's words. I stood up, slipped my napkin onto the table. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't explain. I picked up my cardigan and walked to the hallway. The front door creaked a little as I stepped outside. The air was cool. I could smell grass and something faintly metallic from the new sprinklers. I walked down the steps and sat at the bottom, not looking back. It was nearly 9 o'clock. Not exactly. More like 8:55 p.m. I sat there, my hands folded the same way they had been in the laundry room, holding that invisible weight. Then I stood, walked down the sidewalk past the mailbox. My shoes tapped against the pavement. I didn't know where I was going. But I knew one thing. I wasn't walking back in. I didn't go back that night. I walked for a while, then called my friend Claire. She and I had worked together at the hospital years ago. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice, warm and steady, was the first thing that didn't make me feel invisible in days. She told me to come stay with her. Didn't ask questions until I was ready. The next morning, I woke in her guest room. Sunlight crept in through the blinds. There was a small alarm clock on the nightstand. It read 8:15 a.m. I stared at it for a long time. My old house had an identical clock in the kitchen. I'd left it behind without a second thought. Strange how certain objects become bookmarks in your life. Claire poured coffee into a chipped blue mug I recognized from potlucks long ago. She sat down and waited. I didn't say much, just enough for her to understand I was tired. Not angry, not bitter, just tired of waiting for a place to belong in a life I had built with my own hands. 2 days later, I called a lawyer. He'd handled the sale of my original home. A quiet man, polite with careful eyes. I asked him to confirm something for me. I needed to be sure. I explained the arrangement we had when I gave Victor the money. I asked him legally whose name was on the deed to the new house. He looked over the papers. slid a document across the desk toward me. My name, only mine. No co-signature, no shared ownership. My full legal name, Floriana Ruth Foster. I stared at the letters like they were a lighthouse in thick fog. I took a breath, then I made a decision. It took a few days to organize everything. I didn't tell Claire what I was planning, not at first. I wanted to make sure I was doing it for the right reasons, not to punish, not to get even, but to reclaim something I had surrendered without even noticing. My dignity, my space, my peace. The locksmith arrived on a Friday morning. I met him at the house just after 10 o'clock. He worked quickly. I watched him remove the old locks fitting in the new ones with ease. I wondered if he could sense what this meant for me. Probably not. But he was kind. Didn't ask questions. Just handed me the new keys when he was done. Before I left, I went upstairs to the hallway closet. I found an old notepad with sunflowers on the cover. It was mine, buried behind coats and unused winter boots. I tore out a sheet and sat at the kitchen table. The one I was once told wasn't mine. I wrote slowly, "Victor, I love you. I always will. This home was meant to be ours, a place for family, for laughter, for peace. But over time, I felt like a stranger in it. Not because I stopped trying, but because I stopped being seen. I gave you everything I had, including the roof over your head. I only ever wanted to feel welcome under it. I'm asking you now, as gently as I can, to leave, not because I want to push you away, but because I need space to breathe again. You have 30 days. No anger, no yelling. Just go in peace. Mom." I folded the note and placed it on the counter right beside the stove where I once made Sunday pancakes. Then I left. I didn't look back until I was 3 blocks away. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The porch light still flickered. I made a mental note to fix it once the place was mine again. That night back at Claire's, I slept without waking. In the morning, I made coffee, took it outside, and stood in her small garden. She had a row of marigolds starting to bloom. I touched one gently with my fingertips. The petals were soft, strong, and quietly bright. Over the next week, I returned to the house to begin cleaning. It was quiet, empty, but not cold. I opened windows, lit a candle, brought in a small radio, and played the old jazz station I used to love. I watered the one potted plant still surviving near the back patio, a stubborn little fern. It looked like it had been waiting for me. I sat at the table, just me, and made a simple lunch. A sandwich, a glass of iced tea. I set one plate, one napkin, one fork. It felt good, not lonely, whole. The letter came in early spring. I found it wedged between grocery store coupons and a phone bill. The handwriting was unfamiliar at first, tight and careful, but I knew who it was from the moment I saw my name written in full across the envelope. Lindsay had never written me a note before. The house had been full of texts, calendar reminders, clipped conversations, never anything on paper. I held it for a moment before opening it, standing at the kitchen counter with the afternoon sun falling through the blinds. She began by saying she didn't know how to start. Then she told me something I never expected, that her stepmother used to scream at her for touching the stove, that she was often made to feel like a burden when all she wanted was comfort, that she had spent most of her adult life trying to protect her space, even when no one was threatening it, that I reminded her of someone she hadn't forgiven yet. She said she was sorry, not in the way people say sorry because they feel obligated. It felt real, raw. She said she never meant to push me away, only that she didn't know how to make room without feeling like she would disappear. She ended the letter by thanking me for loving her daughter when she was too exhausted to. I sat down on the couch and read it twice. There was a part of me that wanted to stay quiet, let time handle the rest. But another part, the part that still believed in family even after everything, wanted to answer. Not with a long speech, not with guilt, just with a door that wasn't locked, I invited them to dinner. My apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms and a balcony, but it was mine. I cleaned every corner, set out 3 plates, and made a pot roast that filled the space with warmth. Victor looked nervous when they arrived. Lindsay held their daughter close, not saying much. I greeted them with a nod and asked if they wanted tea. There was no apology expected, no need for one more explanation. Just a meal, some quiet, and the sound of a fork gently tapping the edge of a plate. After dinner, I held my granddaughter on the couch. Her small hands played with the buttons on my sweater. Her head rested on my shoulder, light as a feather. I looked over at Victor, who was watching her with tired eyes, then at Lindsay, who was looking at me without fear. I leaned in close to the little girl and whispered what I hoped she would remember someday. Boundaries don't break families. Disrespect does. In that quiet moment, Floriana realized that healing was not about erasing the past, but about choosing a better future. She had learned that self-respect and compassion can live in the same heart. Setting boundaries had not closed a door. It had opened a path for honesty, for dignity, and for love to grow in a healthier way. The journey taught her that forgiveness is not weakness. It is the courage to see the pain behind someone's actions and still choose peace. If this story spoke to you, take a breath and think of someone in your life who may need to hear your truth, your boundary, or your forgiveness. Share this story with them. Start a conversation in the comments about how you learn to protect your peace without losing your heart. Together we can show that families are strongest when respect and compassion walk hand in hand.